Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is Victoria Kamar Olivett with her historic novel, The Adventures of Francie Fitzgerald. Welcome, Victoria.
It is such a pleasure to be here. I want to let you know that your library and the facilities have been so wonderful to me and my book.
Yes, it was fun. We met there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and tell us about your book cover and how it describes your heroine.
Well, Francie Fitzgerald is an Irish-American young lady living in Newark, New Jersey in 1885. And the story really begins with Francie walking to the lake. She gets a view of an animal that scares her. The animal is actually dead. Its eyes are staring at her. There's foam from the mouth, and this scares her. So she runs home to the safety of her family and with her best friend, Sean. They start looking in some newspapers, and they actually find a boy in New York City who had recently been attacked, had his nose replaced, back on his nose, and a few weeks later he couldn't drink. So they knew it was hydrophobia. Rabies is also called hydrophobia because they cannot drink because of their neck muscles.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And so the poor kid really suffered, and this really scared her because he died at the age of 11. Wow. And both New York City and Newark had lots of dogs that roamed freely, and people just let them be wild. So that was kind of a scary image that gets the story going.
What a gripping beginning, yes. Startling. Yes, and this is a story that involves lots of historic research, a lot of science, right?
Oh, it is.
And how does it relate to Louis Pasteur?
Well, eventually, Francie's brother and two of his friends are attacked, and they end up in Paris, France, where they receive Dr. Pasteur's serum.
Wow.
But this Dr. Pasteur is in the story quite a bit because his germ theory was there. And it was felt that just opening the doors at the hospital would air out the germs. But no, with Pasteur's germ theory, he explained how, it needs to be antiseptic. So Dr. Lister, who was the head of the hospitals in England, put all the sinks in. He had wounds washed. He had the staff wash their hands. And for once, people were being antiseptic.
This is very
and people
yes.
Were surviving their hospital stay.
That's right. Oh, this is a lot of research, a lot of science involved. I remember Dr. Lister that's where we got Listerine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Lister, who was the first really to emphasize how important hand washing is, and still part of our medical practices now.
And I think also with the COVID, it keeps us all on alert to be clean. And I notice restaurants are a lot cleaner than some of them used to be,
Yes, yes. And so, wow, what gave you this idea? What motivated you to start writing about such a...
Well, my husband was ill, and I took him to the hospital. We were living in Lansing, Michigan. And there was a computer in the waiting room, and all of a sudden, the Newark Boys come up, the 3 kids, and there was an article about it. And being a retired teacher, I thought, wow, this would be a great story, not only for kids, but anyone who's interested in scientific and historical facts. And that got me going. I figured I better get to it before somebody else has the idea.
Yes. So you did something with all that waiting room time.
Yes, I did.
That's amazing, because we often sit in the doctor's waiting room for several hours, right?
Yes.
And then you just you made it into something. Okay, so how long was this incubation period, or how long did it take you to
It
develop
took
the
me a
story?
while because, as I said, my husband was ill, but we ended up moving here, and he did much better with the hospitals here. He ended up having a heart-liver transplant at Northwestern,
That
and
is
it was from a
huge.
gene,
Yeah.
just a gene that he was born with. And right now he golfs and swims, and
Oh my gosh, what
it's
an
been 6
incredible
years.
turn of
Yes,
events for
so
you.
Francie and her family kept me company for a long time.
Oh yes, I think she inspired you to
Yes.
to go on with this journey. My goodness, what
Yes.
a turn of events for you. And so, did you start it out knowing that you would be writing a historic novel, or were you
Yes.
thinking that it's just a little short story?
Well, I thought it would be a way to continue my teaching, which I did for over 30 years in the public schools.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be fascinating for all age groups to enjoy.
Yes, these teachers have a way to be a teacher all your life, right?
Yes. And I'm working on the sequel as well.
I see. Well, tell us first, before you go on to the sequel, is the Adventures of Francie Fitzgerald seems to be have some, let's say, did it cause you any problems that you didn't anticipate?
Well, it was a lot of research that I needed to have the background.
Mm-hmm.
And they do get on a ship, and they do go to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And, having been there, it was easy for me to describe all those things. So I was able to apply the knowledge that I had.
Such a long journey, though, right?
It was a
That
long
time?
journey at that time.
Even that time, it was not safe. I mean, they could.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, it could be a very difficult journey, especially for the immigrants that came here.
Yes.
What they went through.
So did you do most of your research on computers, or did you go to particular locations or libraries, or what was your form?
Well, I ended up, when my daughter was living near Newark, I got some information, books there.
So local research.
Yes. And then a lot of books that I ordered that I could keep and mark up. It was a labor of love, I want to tell you. I really enjoyed it. And having 9 grandkids, I thought they would enjoy it as well.
And you're just able to extend your tenure as a teacher.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Yes, and I keep on learning.
That's what teachers do, right?
Yes, we keep on learning, and it's a joy.
Victoria, so usually that journey to find a publisher is a bumpy and long journey. Now, how about you? Were you lucky?
I was lucky because when we were in Chicago, I noticed Joshua Tree Publishing. And talking to the publisher, he was very encouraging, and he wanted to publish the book because there was lots of really good values. There was family values. There were immigrants who came here, who worked hard, who appreciated living in this country with all its opportunities.
Yes, yes, and that's a message that so many generations of Americans can appreciate. So what do your readers say about your book?
Well, I've had a lot of young people read it. I've had older people, adults, and it's always very encouraging and very positive.
Do you have a certain age group that when you were, let's say, the word choice and vocabulary, were you looking at a certain grade level?
I think as I started, it was going to be for young people, and I have gotten the book out there in many of the middle schools in the area, and I have a lot more to do, but I made a donation so the kids will start reading it. But I've had adults too who have read the book and enjoy it.
Do you have plans to visit, let's say, District 34 schools?
Oh, sure. I sure am. I'm making a list, and when I get in the area, I'm dropping the book off. It's my way of spreading the word of all the research that I've done.
Right, and the connection that you make with the community is so valuable.
Yes, it really is, because, you know, people will read it. And my daughter, Teresa, who's now in Serbia, she showed me the book. It's on the bookshelf in her home.
That's great. That's
So
very
it does get around. It's in
rewarding.
Racine,
Mhm.
and it's in, you know, our area here today.
That's really a rewarding experience that I'm sure many of our viewers look forward to have that for themselves.
Thank you.
So, what advice would you give our writers out there?
Well, I think you have to write about something that you're very passionate about. Then it's not really work. And you have to enjoy the research. And take your time and don't push yourself to do it. That's what I feel is the most important thing. If you're passionate, then you'll do a good job.
If you're passionate, you'll do a good job. And that's a good way to remember stay focused, right, in our
Yes.
goals. So now, when you did you do all your editing yourself, or were you with a writing group that contributed to your?
Well, my editor actually went over it when I was finished, the publisher, and he did a very good job.
I see. So, did you submit an outline first, or did you just submit a whole
I
manuscript?
submitted the whole book.
I see. Wow. That is, I would think that takes a lot of organization and.
A lot of effort.
Yes. Oh, so now what connects you to Glenview?
My daughter lives in the area, and one day I was driving around, and I told her I was going to stop at your library. And I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And when I went in there, they were so very nice to me, even though I don't live there. And they put my book on the local authors section of your library.
Yes, we do have a whole shelf for that.
And I was amazed of what a beautiful library it is. And I go in there quite often and work on various things.
So it has become your regular stop now.
Yes, it is. And then I was able to present my book, as you mentioned earlier, a couple of times. And the staff there is so polite and so encouraging. Appreciate it so much.
That's wonderful to hear, because I enjoy it too, and that's how we met.
Yeah.
There. Victoria, what plans do you have for your sequel?
Well, it's a continuation of the story. It has to do with Francie. I don't want to, you know, give the story away at this time, but how her life progresses, the family, and what happens to her in her career. She was motivated by going on the ship to go see Dr. Pasteur, and there was a nurse and a hospital room for the injured parties. And this was all donated by the people in Newark and New York. And, you know, it was put in the newspaper, and they wrote down whatever somebody gave. There was even a haberdasher who contributed clothes for the kids, because it was going to be very cold on the Atlantic that time of the year.
What a wonderful, story of charity too.
Yes,
right?
it is.
The community.
That in those days it was just common knowledge that you took care of the family, you took care of each other, and you did the right thing.
So Mike, I have a question. For all that research you did on famous people like Dr. Lester and Dr. Pasteur, what did you learn about them on a personal level, perhaps? Did you feel you could connect with them?
I did. I felt like, you know, it was all their knowledge that helped people to survive. And I know back in the old days when people were getting the flu and dying from the flu, those individuals that made it knew they had to really keep the home clean. They had to keep it scoured, because they knew that it was the germs, like in the sink in the kitchen. You know, if you cook with certain foods and you leave it there, you get bacteria and illnesses. So I think we need to kind of look back at our history.
I recently just saw a program on YouTube about the history of butter, and they said that people pretty much ate rancid butter regularly until until the icebox. And they
Oh,
learned to deal with the rancid butter by adding some sugar, some other things, but they still ate it. So this idea that it wasn't until the icebox, which is quite late if you think, right, quite
yes,
recent past, right,
yes.
that people started to take more care of what they're eating is actually very interesting.
Oh, I always found all that scientific information is fascinating.
And how about any personal stories about Dr. Pasteur that you found out?
I found out that he was a wonderful man, family man, hard worker, and they were having trouble with the wine industry in France. And he came up with a solution to boil at a certain temperature. And that helped because the wine industry is very big in France, and they were
Huge.
losing
Yes.
millions. And then, of course, he also came up with pasteurization of milk, and that he did the same thing.
So he found out a certain temperature was helpful for one product or another, and
He was not a physician. He could not give the rabies serum. He'd have to have a doctor in the room with him.
I see.
But he was just a great scientist who had a lot of faith. He lost several of his children to such diseases as diphtheria.
Yes.
And their microscopes at that time were not strong enough
Right.
to really find a cure.
Yeah, we don't think about that, right? When
We don't.
the smallpox was starting to smallpox was the vaccine came in the early, I think the late 18th century. So that was around.
That was around. It was. And diphtheria.
Yeah.
And many of the diseases that are coming back, if you think about it, you know, even polio, when people are not vaccinated, they found cases in New York recently
Right, right.
because they're not getting their vaccines.
And they've been around for a long time, these
Yes.
illnesses. Yeah. Well, Victoria, what advice do you have for our authors? Just a short message you have for authors out there?
Be confident and always write on the things that you enjoy learning about, hearing about, and how you can make other people enjoy what you're writing if you enjoy it. So that would be my best advice.
Victoria, your book is set in 1885. Can you tell us something about that time and bring us back?
Well, a lot of great things happened in 1885. I think one of the better things was the Statue of Liberty arrived in New York Harbor.
Wow.
Francie and her boyfriend, Sean, go to see the Statue of Liberty being put up.
The various
Right in
pieces,
front of them,
right?
in the pieces.
Yes.
But the thing of it was that there was not a pedestal that came with it. The American people had to donate money, and it was put in the paper of all the people who donated. And so that encouraged more donations, and it was the poor, it was the school children in Iowa who managed to put in $1. Even Francie and Sean had worked extra hours to contribute, and they managed to come up with $100,000, not from the rich, but if without that pedestal, we would not have the Statue of Liberty. And she remembers Emma Lazarus, give me your poor your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And she realizes through that that she wants to be like that. She wants to be able to express herself and go to school and be the first in her family to graduate high school, which her family, especially her aunt, thought no, she should just stay home and take care of the house. But she wanted to do more. And she wanted to be such an amazing person, represented by the Statue of Liberty itself. And the words that Emma Lazarus could write, she wanted to do that.
So the Statue of Liberty becomes a part of the story. Like it's an inspiration.
It is. It's an inspiration, and it motivates her to do great things in her life.
Wow. That's really moving. I don't even know what to say after that. Okay, so in 1885, you told us a lot about that time. What other things happened? I mean, that is a pivotal year for America. $1 is a lot of money that children could put together and earn.
Well, she runs into a great musician who could do wonderful band music, and he ends up being John Philip Sousa. And all the wonderful American music, which they played when they were putting up the Statue of Liberty.
Wow. So it's a true American monument.
It really is. And when you go there and see that, and so many of our ancestors came on that boat.
Yeah, through Ellis
and
Island.
Assimilated, and in New Jersey, there, they had a lot of immigrant groups, which they all got along. They were able to respect each other's differences, and they all worked hard at the shoe factory there, some of the other factories. And they never had any problems respecting other people's ideas or beliefs.
Well, that's a very encouraging message for us, to think. We generally think our modern day or current day is more advanced or more progressive, but we don't think about other times. Maybe they could teach us something.
Yes.
Well, when my family came to America first, we arrived in 1978 in Newark.
Wow.
So I do have memories of this wonderful, inspirational statue, the Statue of Liberty my family visited as a child.
You remember that?
I do. It was so. I'm very moved by your retelling of Francie's experience.
Well, my grandparents immigrated as well. My one grandmother was from Spain. She married my grandfather, who was a tour guide in Palestine. And also, my mother's parents also immigrated from Lebanon.
I see.
And my grandma, my mother's mother, was a little bit more modern. She crocheted a flag for President Franklin D. Roosevelt, which is in his place in New York.
Wow.
And someday I'm going to go visit that. But she loved him. She voted for him for 4 times.
Yes. Wow, that's a wonderful story and a wonderful artifact to visit.
Oh, yes.
From your personal family line.
So
that is just a good story.
And they all went to the war, and they all, thank God, they all came back. And what a loving family.
Yes.
They appreciated each other. They took care of one another. And you kind of see this in the story, that we should take care of each other.
And the values of that is it can be passed on to generations. Well, thank you, Victoria, for being here on our program.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I had so much fun.
Me too. And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.